Good morning to you, Carl. Thanks for joining us here at Yellow Shelf.
Hello, John. How are you?
I'm so good. It is morning for you. It's afternoon here for me in Australia. You're in the UK.
I am, and it's another dull day here in the UK, even though we've had some really nice weather the last few weeks, but it's a little dull this morning. But I'm delighted. I'm brightened by your lovely logo, your yellow
Oh.
shelf branding. So it's giving me a nice bit of
I'm
light here.
delighted by
So,
your real shelf in the background. So there you
oh God,
go.
yeah.
Thank you so
So
much
nice
for
to meet
joining
you.
us. You are the host of Better at Work podcast. Now, I know about your podcast. I've been listening to it for a while. You created this podcast in 2022 and you've got
That's
more than
right.
30 episodes under your belt. What do we need to know about your podcast?
Oh, thank you. Well, Better at Work, yes, going now for a few years. The podcast came out of I suppose I had this vision of how do you help people have a better day at work? That was the real premise because I have worked in big corporates for 25 years
Yeah.
and you see so many people that just are not having a good day.
Yeah.
And a lot of people used to come to me for advice on work things like I've got a difficult boss or how do I deal with these challenges that the company is going through. And so I was like, how can I help more people with this? And look, the other thing is, as a kid, I always wanted to be a radio DJ. So I thought, well, here's the perfect way now to combine the two. I can help people and I can be that DJ that I thought I was going to be when I was 18, 19, but ended up 25 years working in big corporates. But the podcast really, what is so great about it is I get to talk to some amazing behavioral scientists and psychologists from across the globe. These are like people that I have looked up to for many years. I've used them myself, Joanna, in my own corporate life when dealing with challenging situations. I would turn to their books
Yeah.
or their YouTubes or their LinkedIn learnings and so every guest I have on, there's someone that I have probably used at some point over my career.
Yeah.
And lots of new ones as well that come up in the last few years. And really what we do is I talk to them and because I'm not a journalist,
Yes.
I'm a person who's worked, I know the drama that happens in organizations.
Yeah.
I know that people suffer with confidence issues. I know that people dread feedback, all the kind of practical things.
Yes.
So then what I do is I interview these big guests. They are usually, a leading expert in the field. And I try to bring a bit of reality to it. And I try to get two or three things that a normal person could bring to their job tomorrow. That's my main aim with the podcast. It's about practical advice that anyone listening. So it's not about me having a conversation and kind of getting into, what's the science behind blah and how did you do the research on that? How did you go really deep on that? Like I'm not into that. Like I'm into the science, but I'm more interested in what does it mean for Jessie, who's working in a call center in Adelaide, how
Yes.
could she take this? Or Tony, who's in Cincinnati and he can't, get through to his boss. What can we learn from you as a psychologist or behavioral scientist that they can take into real life?
Yeah, and look, so your guests, particularly their insights, your technique of questioning is just really insightful and enjoyable as the host.
Oh, that's so
Um,
sweet of you to say. We do get that. Some people actually like listening to my voice, which I was like, I never really liked my voice. I don't think anyone likes their own voice,
no,
right? I mean,
no. But I
sometimes I
like
hear
your
my voice,
voice.
I'm like, oh, well, I get messages from people in the US. They're like, oh, and they leave voicemails on LinkedIn. And, I get these messages and they're like, oh, I really love your voice. It calms me down on my way into work. And I'm like, oh my
Oh,
God, I don't think anyone else would say that because I'm a bit wild. But yeah, the I think we get a lot of listeners who like the interview style
yep.
because I suppose I try to bring a bit of humor as well,
Yes.
and the format is very much like I always start with the same question to all of the
Yes.
guests, like,
Yes.
why did they become interested in the area? And I
Mm.
always finish with the same three questions. I always ask them, what's one thing a normal person could do tomorrow?
Yep,
What's the best advice they've ever been given? And listeners like that. They
they
like
do.
that there's this kind of top and tail to it that
Yes.
is always the same. And I suppose, look, to be honest with you, I do read the books of the guests, or it's not like I just, I actually spend a lot of time.
Of
I'll,
course.
I'll spend 2 or 3 days before the interview watching them on other shows, etc. So that the listener doesn't feel like, oh, this is just him having a yap. Like I try to go, what am I going to get out of this that's going to help our listeners?
Yeah. Well, you do that well, can I say? You really do that well.
Oh, thank you.
Um, Another thing I was just going to add, and I don't know if this is not your intention, but I feel like when I listen to your episodes, when you talk about work, it actually complements my life. It helps me with the balance. Does that
Yeah,
comment
well,
make
actually,
sense?
that's funny you picked that up because when I started the podcast, and I have a lovely co-host, Annette, who I asked to be on the show to help with listeners' questions. So we do listeners' questions at the end of each
Yes.
episode. And a big emphasis on the list. Why I wanted the listeners' questions was that I believe, and the tagline I have for the show is when work is better, life is better.
Yeah.
So you said about life there,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
because ultimately, the two kind of weave in
Hmm.
together, right? If you have
Yeah.
a bad day at work, it doesn't just impact your life, it impacts the people's lives around you, like your
Around.
family,
Yeah.
etc., because you bring that home. So that's why we have a big emphasis on how can this help you make your whole life better. And
Yeah.
we've got some episodes that are really maybe a bit more life focused. We had one
Sure.
with Aisha Bassel. Aisha Bassel is the world's leading industrial designer. You'd go, well, why did I have her on? Well, she wrote a book, How to Design a Long Life You Love. And
Yeah.
it was so interesting. And, she took the design thinking tools and applied them to life. So, yeah,
Wow.
we try to. So every season, we kind of
Yeah.
go, we always want a few episodes that are focused on life's
Yeah.
bigger challenges as well as the work challenges. And I suppose then if we can help you have a better day at work, we hope that you have a better life as well, if that makes sense.
It makes sense. It definitely resonates with me in listening. What do we need to know about you? Because I know
Oh,
you touched on corporate, you touched on like wanting to
mm.
be a radio DJ or host. Like, what do we need to know about you as the host? I think that's really good for the Yellow Shelf audience to get a sense of that.
Yeah, I think for me as a host, my main aim is to help people. So I've always been that kind of a person, even if it's like someone says, "Oh, we're in Sydney for the weekend." I will have sent them already 3 restaurants they need to go to. Don't
Wow.
stay at that hotel. I stayed there. That's not very nice, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So I think naturally as a person, I'm a kind of a natural helper, connector,
Yeah.
kind of like going, "Oh, I made that mistake. I wouldn't want you to make it."
Yeah.
So I'm very like that. My partner and I have 2 kids as well. A little girl called Ayla, and she's 2, and a little boy called Oren, and
Oh,
he's 9 months.
yeah.
That's keeping us very busy. And
Oh,
actually, on that, what that has shown me is the challenge for parents returning to
yeah.
work, right? I
Yeah.
think that's as a relatively new parent, we're actually just planning an episode. I've got a
Ah,
great guest coming
fabulous.
on how to help parents navigate work.
Yeah.
And so, that's I suppose me. What else about me? I suppose in big companies that I've worked in, I was sometimes known as the Graham Norton of business because, I am Irish and
Yeah.
jokey, and even though I'm jokey, I have a very serious side as well of getting things
Yeah.
done. But I suppose I always think that, a bit of humor goes a long way. And I suppose I'm a
Yeah.
natural talker, so I
Yes.
can I can usually build relationships with people pretty well. And like,
Yeah.
the way you're doing your show, you can build great relationships over Zoom and
Yeah.
Teams,
Yes.
as well. You don't necessarily always need to be in the same room with
Yeah.
someone. And I think that's a skill. You've obviously got it because you're interviewing people all across the globe. And that's not easy, right? That's a skill.
Yes.
And maybe you have to be warm, you have to be organized, you have to be generous. I think being generous as a host is important,
Very.
to highlight the person. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No,
Maybe
it
I've rambled
does.
too
No
much
wonder
there.
I feel like I want to keep talking to you for the next hour. That makes complete sense. So Look, and yeah, I would love to keep talking, but what my final question is going to be, what's the best way to connect with you or to the podcast? I will put this in the show notes. I
Brilliant.
honestly cannot recommend your podcast highly enough, even just to listen to your voice, your guests, their insights, and just even deep dive into some old episodes because they really, really are stunning episodes. How do we
Oh,
connect with
thank
you?
you. Well, you can connect, you can search for the podcast wherever you get your podcasts on Apple or Spotify. Just put in Better at Work. Give us a follow on there so you always
Yeah.
get the latest episode.
Yep.
That's the first thing to do. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. Just put in my name, Cathal, Cathal, Quinlan, Quinlan, and you'll see my face there with Better at Work branding, and give us a follow on there. And of course, you can follow. I have a newsletter that is also on LinkedIn, but also on our website, which is betteratwork.net. That's
Yes.
betteratwork.net. I hope I've given the right address. I think I
I will
have.
put all those in the show notes to make it super easy for anyone to connect with you and start listening and subscribing as well. Um, Look, I thank you for joining. I honestly I could ask you and talk to you for ages, but 10
Oh
minutes,
no,
10 minutes give or there is the yellow shelf rules. So
it's so good. Listen, keep doing what you're doing as well. It's great that you
same for you.
summarize and just give people that really good taster of different shows and authors across the globe.
There's
Fantastic.
there's some really great stuff out there that I just love sharing. And yeah, hopefully I can give everyone a little skim of 10 minutes and a connect. So that's what it's all about. But you were my
Love
connect.
it.
So thank you so much for being here.
Not at all. Thank you. Chat soon.
Cheers.